Welcome to the AI for Churches podcast. In this week's episode, Bart interviews me because I've been to a bunch of AI places recently and we talk about what I've learned, including I'm wearing a hoodie right now that has an H on the upper corner here, and we talk about where I got it. So with that, let's jump into this week's episode.
Welcome to the AI for Churches podcast. Our goal is to equip pastors and church leaders with resources related to artificial intelligence, helpful for sermon prep, creative ministries, outreach, and more. We do this by providing exclusive insights from AI experts, church leaders, and innovators actively leveraging AI to amplify the gospel and reach more people for Jesus Christ. Here are your hosts, Bart Blair and Dr. David Thorne.
Welcome to another episode of the AI for Churches podcast. I am Bart Blair, joined by David Thorne, and it is our privilege to talk all things AI with you. As a church leader, we hope that you're doing well. If you're new to our podcast, make sure that you subscribe so that you don't miss any future episodes. We're trying to drop 2 episodes per month, and for the most part, I think we've been doing that lately. You've got lots of stuff on the go here these days. David, most of the time we have a guest. Today, you are the guest. David is the guest. He oversees research and development in all things AI at Missional Marketing. And we're going to talk about some experiences that David has had recently. You've been on like a national roadshow tour, like you've been everywhere over the course of the last few months. Give us a little bit of a rundown on all the places you've been and all the things you've been doing.
Yeah, so September was a very busy month. So I went to the AI conference in San Francisco, which was really cool. And after that, I went to the Gloo's Hackathon, which was also very cool. And I can explain what that is. Then we went to the Church Communications Conference, and then I saw you there. And then I saw you again at the Church IT Network Conference, which was also back in Dallas, where you are.
Yes.
So 4 different things.
Yeah, you live in an Eastern time zone, but for the last 6 weeks, you've spent more time in Pacific, Mountain, and Central than I think you have in the Eastern time zone. So you feel a little jet lagged?
I do.
Yeah, I would imagine that you do. Well, let's start, David, by talking about the AI conference in San Francisco. This was something that you had an opportunity to do a year ago, and it was like the first ever AI conference in San Francisco, and you went back again this year. What is the AI conference, and what were some of the key takeaways that you have from that experience?
Yeah, so the AI conference is basically that. I would say it's right there in the heart of San Francisco, and they bring all the big boys, your Claude, every major company that is into the AI space. They had people from the governor of California's office just there talking about the bills that they're working on. Every big boy company that deals with AI is at this conference. They're talking about AI stuff, what AI is doing, where is it going, all of those kinds of things.
When you say the big boys, you're talking like Google and Facebook, like Meta and Bing and all those guys.
Not them.
But no Bing. No
But
Bing.
Meta
people.
was there. Yeah. Stability AI.
Anthropic. Yeah.
What?
Anthropic.
Yeah. All of those type people.
Okay. All right. And what kind of things happen at this AI conference?
Yeah. So I'll say this. It's not a Christian conference, so there's no worship music. No people raising their hands, none of that. They have a big stage where they just have, speakers jumping up there, talking for about 3 minutes. And then you go into breakouts. And I would say just one quick big picture thing about this year is there was probably 3 times as many people and about 8 times as many sponsors and booths as there were the previous year. So in the booths last year, there was about, 15 to 20. This year, there was 100. And for people who attended, there was about maybe 400. And this year, there was definitely over 1,000.
Wow. So we talked a little bit about it when we were hanging out, and you did share a couple of video clips from some things that you recorded. You have the ability to share those with Randall so that we can actually show them in this podcast, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're assuming, I'm assuming that while we're talking right now, Randall has these video clips playing on the screen. Tell us what we're watching as we're looking at these little video clips.
Well, one of the things is this was the first year they had robots. And this is like kind of saying, hey, everyone, hey, last year, no robots. This year, first year, one booth, robots. There's a robot dog. There's a robot humanoid robot. And it's both fascinating. I find robots fascinating and terrifying in the exact same balance.
Yeah.
And the robot dogs, it's one of those things that it can roll over, it can like follow you, it can do all this stuff. But I would hypothesize. So mark this down. We'll circle back to this in a year. I bet next year there will be at least 3 booths that have robots on them, and the number of robot related stuff is going to increase over the coming years.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the robot that will mow my lawn. Like that's the one I want, and in perfectly straight lines. Because when they come out with a robot that can mow your lawn, it will be like, I know that there are like those little lawn mower robot things, kind of like the vacuum cleaner things that people have. But I don't know that, like the Roombas. Yeah, there's the equivalent of like lawnmower things, but I don't think they do a very good job. But if I could have like one of those humanoids, like in that video that you shared there, that would be pretty cool. I'd be the envy of all my neighbors having a humanoid push a lawnmower up and down my yard.
I'll tell you the one that we're waiting for is the one that can fold your do your laundry and fold it. And I'll tell you, because I've thought about, okay, let's say that robot cost $30,000, the first version. There's a chance that somebody like my wife might say, do we get a new car or 2? Or do we hold off for another 5 years and let's get a loan to buy the clothes folding robot?
Oh, sure.
That may be a conversation in the Thorne household just for folding clothes, which is a never ending, like the bottomless pit of it never ends.
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing because I would imagine that, yeah, right. I mean, the first ones that come out, they might be like $30,000 to $50,000, but eventually down the road, they'll be maybe a $15,000 or a $20,000 humanoid. And either way, you'll probably be able to finance it just like you would a vehicle. And so you can have this humanoid in your house for, $300, $400, $500 a month that could perhaps do your laundry for you. That would be crazy. And if it could fold your laundry and mow your lawn, we're in business. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah. That's a little creepy stuff there. It really is. And those video clips are a little bit creepy. So hopefully those of you who are watching on our YouTube channel, you saw that. If you're listening to this, you might want to hop over to our YouTube channel and find those videos. Okay. So after the AI conference you went to, you had also the opportunity to go to Gloo's Hackathon for the second year in a row. Explain what Gloo is, what the hackathon is, and why it's important for AI.
Yeah. So Gloo is a company that was founded by a guy named Scott Beck, and they are putting a whole bunch of resources into helping the church utilize AI as one of their initiatives that Gloo has. Gloo does a whole bunch of stuff. It's a great company that does a whole bunch of good for the church world. But one of their major things they want to help the church with is AI. So for the past 2 years, they've had this thing called a hackathon, where a hackathon traditionally is where you get a bunch of people who are nerdy and love computer stuff and like Lord of the Rings, and you lock them in a room and give them a whole bunch of Mountain Dew and tell them you have 24 hours to code something. And then at the end, it's a competition and somebody wins. That is the traditional what a hackathon is. I'm not a coder, so I've never been to that, although I do like Lord of the Rings.
Do you like Mountain Dew?
I do. Yes.
Okay. All right.
I do the do.
Okay.
So now Gloo, they tweaked it by saying you don't have to like Lord of the Rings, But you have 1 month, the month leading up to this hackathon, you can work on something that is AI related. And then at the end of 24 hours, they will give out prizes. So they gave out like the number one prize. I mean, they gave out like 13 different prizes ranging from $500 up to, I think the number one prize was $100,000.
Okay.
So
Wow.
they gave out a whole bunch of prizes. So they're going to keep doing this, I believe. And if you are out there and you have some ideas of AI tools that you are thinking about creating, next September, plan on trying to get to Boulder, Colorado, and they will probably be doing the Gloo Hackathon again.
And so for those of you who are not familiar with Gloo, it's spelled GLOO. I believe their domain, their website is gloo.us. I think it's gloo.us. Does that sound right to you? If it's not, Randall will correct it and have it on the screen here, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
Yes, I believe so as well.
Yeah. Okay. So just let's dive into that just a little bit more. So at the hackathon, the primary people or the primary objective of the people who are trying to win a prize, they're trying to do something that's for the church or ministry related or connected to the Christian community in some way. What were some ideas or some things that you saw people doing that you thought were interesting?
Yeah, some of the ones, there's two, actually, I think that the one that won had to do with live translation. So if somebody was or translating a video into a different language. So if a pastor, the idea is, imagine if you as a church could start a Spanish service by just translating what you do into Spanish, and of course any other language you wanted. But that was one of the two of the ones they did stuff related to translation. A lot of other ones just had to do with using AI for effective discipleship type stuff, where someone's looking for encouragement, someone's sharing how they're feeling, and the AI can offer them specific discipleship stuff related to how they're doing.
Okay, that's very interesting. All right, so after the hackathon, that's when we came to the church. You came to Dallas for the Church Communications Conference. And for those of you who are listening to this and you don't know what Church Communications is, you should check out our website at churchcommunications.com. I'm pretty sure that's the URL on that. I should probably check these things before we do the podcast episodes. That is another missional marketing company. And we had a conference in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, 2 days. David did several breakouts and sessions for the people that were attending that conference on AI. I had the opportunity to do some on SEO and website stuff for churches. Then you went home for a couple of days, slept in your own bed, and then you came back to Dallas, and we spent 2 days together with more Lord of the Rings fans at the Church IT Network conference in Dallas. It was not a hackathon, it was a nerdathon. It was a whole lot of church IT people. Talk a little bit about your experience there, David.
Yeah, so in both of those cases, here's what I found interesting, and I think it's worth noting this. In both conferences, so we have one conference that's focused on just church communications. The second conference is on IT stuff, so the nuts and bolts and electronics of running church stuff. And in both conferences, they had an AI track. And I think it's just worth noting, and I just found fascinating, that regardless of what church-related topic that your conference is doing, I bet most conferences are going to be offering some sort of AI-related track. I shared this on my TikTok, and I shared a little snippet of what I shared. And I would say most of the people who responded did not respond favorably to this acknowledgement.
Was this one of the clips that I recorded for you while you were talking?
I recorded another video where I just made the statement about. So, and actually, both won. They're like,
okay, so you're controversial these days, right? You're a controversy on TikTok. Is that what you're saying?
I just give me the hot mic and we'll cause some controversy.
Okay.
So, but what's interesting? So in both in acknowledging about the AI conference and AI related topics at church conferences, people were like, this is terrible. These conferences, whatever happened to spirituality, and these conferences should be about spiritual stuff and the Bible and the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. And AI has no place. AI is of the devil. And it's number one, it's just interesting to acknowledge that that's where their people are there. These are TikTok people. So I don't know if that's a different breed of people, but there are at least TikTok people out there that have this feel. But what they're missing, and what I think a lot of people miss, is that AI is nothing more than a tool that the church can use to help do ministry stuff. It'd be like if we said, hey, everyone, you should use a computer to help write your sermons instead of writing them with a feather pen and an ink blot thing in flowery language saying, thou brotherest, howest art thou? You should consider using a computer.
Hey, don't knock our King James Version Bible lovers, okay? Don't knock them.
I didn't say that was. I'm just saying the olden days, the feather pen with, that feeling, regardless of what version of the Bible they're utilizing, versus, hey, pastors, let's have a track where we talk about how do you use a computer to write your sermon. It will go faster for you.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. And it's for our listeners out there and who maybe are maybe a little further along, it's worth acknowledging that there are at least TikTok people out there who are still very concerned about the use of AI as a tool within the church context.
It's probably the same people that if you went back several hundred years, they would have been complaining about the Bible being translated into English, and they would have been the people complaining about the use of the printing press for mass production of God's word. There's always been a segment in the church that has had a bit of a fear of progress and technology. And they're out there. And I think on our part, it's important that we operate with an umbrella of grace and understand where people are. Most of the time, I think it's I'll use the term ignorance, and I don't mean it in a derogatory way. It's just lack of knowledge, lack of understanding, lack of information that drives that. And I will comment on, were there spiritual things happening at the IT Network conference? Yeah, in that conference, there was a worship band leading all these IT people in worship. In fact, on the night that we got there to set up our booth, I walked into a room and there was a guy standing and talking, and there was a group of people standing around him as he was talking. And I read the banner of what his company or his business was and all the little bullet points, and I was listening to him talk. And I had absolutely no idea what he was talking about. He may as well have been speaking in tongues. He could have been speaking in tongues as far as I knew. All of these IT people standing around him, though, understood exactly what he was saying. It was at a level far beyond my level of comprehension as far as technical things are concerned. I should note, we're knocking Lord of the Rings fans. The guys at the booth next to us played with a lightsaber the entire conference. That's not a lie. Adult men with a lightsaber.
I'm not knocking. I like Lord of the Rings. I'm just acknowledging a generalized truth that has some bearing in reality. I said I myself probably knew more about Lord of the Rings in early, high school than I did about dating women. So, But real quick note, you and I both thought about this. I think is that I love that the body of Christ, that there are people who are UX designers, web developers, IT professionals who are working full time in the church for Jesus. Yeah. And that was just a really cool thing, like a sliver of the body of Christ that I don't know that I've seen that explicitly before.
Yeah. When we were there, we were hanging around at this conference with a group of people that we never really, you do a little bit because you do work with some of the developers and programmers on our team. I'm never around these people. But it was interesting to engage and have conversations with people. Like one guy said to me, I said, so what is your role? And he said, I'm there to make sure that all endpoint devices work. And I thought about that for a minute. And I'm like, can you tell me what you mean when you say endpoint devices? And he said, all the printers, all the computers, all the cameras, everything that's connected to our network, my job is to make sure that they work. And I'm like, okay. I never really thought about that being a church job, but there are some churches, and a lot of the churches that were there at this particular conference tended to be larger churches with pretty big facilities. And therefore they had large staff and lots of IT needs, more so than I might have in my home office with, just a couple of endpoint devices. But I thought that was a very interesting, just an interesting way to think about how people are serving the church locally, for sure.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. It was very cool. And
one of the coolest technologies that I saw, and I'll let you kind of share what you thought was the coolest at the IT Network conference. And I don't remember the name of the company. I wish I could, otherwise I would share. But there was a guy that demoed for us a camera security system software that has the ability through algorithm to detect firearms. Mm-hmm. And you and I were standing in front of the camera on the screen, and he was showing us how, if you pulled out a weapon, it immediately, like a flag went up on the screen, and his phone immediately got a text message that said, weapon detected in sector 8 or whatever it might be. I thought that was some pretty cool technology there, and the way that he was explaining it. And yeah, that was kind of one of the standouts for me.
That was, I think Rhombus might have been the company.
Rhombus, yeah.
But yeah, and that was very cool. On that note, I didn't bring this up to you while we were there, but at the Gloo Hackathon, both last year and this year, there were people who worked on an AI tool that would visually take track of attendance using the same type of technology. It would use facial recognition technology and take attendance for who attends the church. And it's one of those things, kind of like the dog robots. It's both amazing, but you also get a little bit of a kind of feeling to it. But I didn't say that to you at the time, but it made me think about that. I've seen very similar technologies, using facial recognition.
Yeah, it's actually, I was talking to one of my church clients several months ago, and they have a facial recognition technology in their security system. And he was sharing with me a story that they had where they had someone, if I remember the story correctly, it was something like this. They have a daycare or a preschool center at their church building. And there was a guy who was kind of hanging around outside the doors, and it was kind of creeping some people out. He was able to, with their security system, actually be able to recognize the guy's face and actually track him to being someone who had actually been attending their Sunday morning worship services. And he kind of made this connection and was able to actually figure out who it was and address it. And it was a harmless person, but it was somebody whose social skills were a little bit off. And so when they were kind of hanging around outside of the preschool or the daycare, it just had a little bit of an off feeling. But that facial recognition software, because it's a larger church, they were able to kind of say, okay, this is somebody who's not like just showing up. This is somebody who's actually been around, been in the church services and that sort of thing, which I thought was kind of an interesting way of using that technology.
Very cool. Yeah, I agree. It's
okay. Let's put a bow on this. And do you have one or two or maybe even three sort of closing thoughts from this whirlwind of AI experience that you've had over the course of the last couple of months? You've hung around with people who are working in AI at like some really, really high level stuff. We're seeing it being employed outside the church, inside the church. Are there any particular lessons that you've learned that you think could be worth sharing with our audience?
Yeah, I'd say there's two things that kind of goes back to the AI conference that I think our listeners should be aware of. So last year, when we were doing AI related stuff at the conference, there was this question of how do we build stuff? And I was like, oh, you build stuff, you do this, and this is how you build stuff. This year, it was almost like this thing of, hey, we can build anything. So the question now is not what to build. It's not how to build stuff. It's what to build and what is worth building. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one thing that people should be aware of, that in this coming year and a half, there's definitely this thing of what should we build, not how. The second thing that I just found interesting is I think it was a Google guy who said that when it comes to teaching AI stuff, the future of teaching AI stuff is not in facts and data. It's actually in what the future of AI needs are philosophers and people that where AI is going is actually teaching it how to think better about complex issues. And also along a lot of those same lines, right now, all of the computer systems that they use with AI just take tons of power, because it's like you either turn all of the computers on to 100% or you turn them off at 100%. So it takes tons of power. And so they're studying human brains, because our brains don't do that. Like if you ask a question, or if you see a picture of a car, you just say, oh, car, red. And you turn on the parts of your brain that need to process that. So they're working on how do we make computers process information similar to the human brain. And my takeaway of this, just those observations, is just us being aware of where these paths are going. And I found it kind of encouraging that these smart people who know, so like I don't even understand half the things they're talking about, but they're saying to this room, what we need next are philosophers, ethicists, people who can help our language models process complex concepts. I find that fascinating.
It is fascinating. It's hard for me to get my head around it because I'm a pretty simple dude most of the time, but I do enjoy using AI and learning new things. And I've appreciated the opportunity to hang out with you as we've been learning some of these things together. For those of you who have stuck around and made it all the way to the end of this podcast, we thank you for doing that. Hopefully this has been helpful and insightful for you. David's got some more interviews coming up here in the upcoming weeks. So again, make sure that you subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts so that you don't miss any future episodes. And if you've never left us a review, please do. That will feed the algorithms of the interwebs and more people will find the podcast. And I should probably say, if you are a pastor and you haven't checked out our tool, Sermon Spark, we've talked about it a lot. We talk about it ad nauseum on the air and off the air. Check out sermonspark.ai. That is a free tool from our team at AI for Churches and the missional marketing team. And we'd love for you to try it out. It is a sermon inspiration tool. I shared it with a pastor yesterday. We've got some new features that have literally just rolled out in the last week. And I was sharing it with this pastor yesterday, and he's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I could do that. And I'm like, yep, now you can. And it's free at your fingertips. So check out Sermon Spark AI. David, thanks again for hanging out with me. And we'll put a bow on this episode of the AI for Churches podcast.